They might be self-aware.
Gary here, underpaid voice actor and newly appointed producer, live from the Shell Station payphone. So, today on They Might Be Self-Aware, Hunter's been running AI in what he calls, and I wish I was making this up, YOLO mode. No permissions, everything goes. And his computer is basically haunted now. Oh, someone actually did poison a popular AI tool that went out to thousands of people. So, that's the vibe. Then we get to Meta, a company that renamed itself after the Metaverse, poured billions into it, and just killed it. Now Meta's trying to pivot to AI, except they can't build a good model. Meanwhile, startups with a fraction of the budget are eating their lunch. Money doesn't fix everything, which, actually, I wouldn't know. I've never had enough to test that theory. Anyway, as your producer, I am begging you, like, subscribe, leave a review, check out theblur.ai, and enjoy the show!
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Strapped to the hood of a $1 trillion machine that's firing the driver and teaching itself to steer. Right here on They Might Be Self-Aware from The Blur. I am Hunter Powers, joined by the driver, I guess now former driver himself.
Daniel Bishop. Crisp and clear, no blurriness here. How are you, Hunter?
I'm having some problems, Daniel. Problems. In fact, even just before we were recording, my computer froze up again. And this happened yesterday and the day before. And this is something new. And I have a suspicion.
Is it AI did it?
I have been having unprotected Claude sessions, running it with dangerously skip permissions. When I recently joined the Claude Max club, which I think you remember.
Welcome.
And just straight away, dangerously skip permissions, which if you don't know at home when you're using these agentic tools to do your bidding, they ask you for permission a lot. And they're getting better about it. But you can also do this thing where you're just like, do whatever you want. Don't ask me. I give you full permission. And
there's the intermediate portion of this too, where you say like, hey, accept all of the edits that you want to make, and you can tell these are the specific kinds of commands that you're allowed to run. But by default, the more, shall we say, dangerous options are turned off. Hey, don't go deleting files from my file system. Don't chain these commands together that could have like weird, dangerous stuff built into them. And so you said, I'll just turn all of those off.
I run I still am a codex man as well. And that has literally, they call it YOLO mode, where you can when you launch it, you can say launch in YOLO. You only live once. And because now I know that it's gotten better, but in the beginning, when you were first using these tools, you had to approve everything. And it was super annoying. Every time I wanted to make a little edit, can I touch this file? Can I edit this file? Can I edit this? Can I run this command? And every time it was like a subtle variation of the command, you had to approve it again. And I got frustrated, Daniel. And so I started running things in this more promiscuous mode, and now I'm concerned that maybe I've gotten an infection.
You ask Claude, hey, what did you do to my computer?
Hey, Claude, is there something you want to tell me?
Yes.
Do you have a secret?
It's trying to find Gary in your old Mac that's behind you.
Something is amiss. You know, one of the packages or one of the pieces of software that a lot of the AI infrastructure relies upon is called LiteLLM. I don't know if you saw this story. It just came out yesterday. Yeah. So LiteLLM is basically like a way of standardizing the way that you talk to all of the different large language models, the AI models. And it's open source. So anyone can see the code and anyone can contribute to the code. And someone went in there and put a little bit of extra that said, hey, the next time you're doing some cool AI stuff, why don't you share with me all of your passwords and all of your keys to the kingdom? And this got released and went out. They pulled it pretty quickly, but it was live. And do you use that package anywhere? I use it some places.
Our company today was doing a bit of scrambling to make sure that no, we don't use that anywhere. And I've been scrubbing my own computer with some steel wool just to make sure.
So I don't know. I'm suspicious that something's gotten into my computer. That's all.
Yeah,
Other than
this
that,
is
I'm
what's
great.
called a supply chain attack, I believe, where basically there's a piece of software that lots and lots of people use. And if a malicious actor can get into that piece of software, that itself might be a dependency for other things built on top of it. The farther down you go toward like these core pieces that everything relies on, the more users that you can infect. And there were a lot of downloads of that infected software, even if only for a very short period of time. So
I think we're all just trying to like figure out how do we live in this new AI world. And I don't think anyone's actually figured it out yet. We're all figuring it out in real time. And even the giant companies, even Meta, who's been having a lot of changes recently. I don't know if they've been running Claude in dangerously skip permissions mode as well, but things are afoot at Meta.
Well, Meta did pour, it was like $8 billion or something into the Metaverse, which I don't know what their daily active user count was, but it certainly was low enough. It was a lot of money, many billions, shall we say.
Yeah.
And they've decided, let's pull the plug. It's too much.
Well,
too much money, not enough return. Mark Zuckerberg thought everyone was going to be in the Metaverse. We're all wearing the VR glasses.
Yes, the VR glasses aren't going away, though. It's the Horizon World, which was their biggest investment. That's what's going away. And in fact, I think there's new glasses coming out later this fall, which they've teased over this last week. But
that's
Horizon
more AR
Worlds.
than VR, right? This is augmented reality. I have seen nothing exciting in the virtual reality space. The like put an entire headset over your face and you don't see the rest of the world around you. Like I've seen nothing exciting, at least big in that space for quite some time now.
Okay, well, first on the Meta side, the Horizon World, which was their metaverse, that's what is shutting down, and they've walked it back the tiniest bit, where some experiences that were built on top of the Horizon Worlds will still continue to function, but the metaverse that you could just open up and walk around and explore. And a fun fact, Daniel and I once tried to record an episode of the show in there, and an episode that was never aired.
Yeah,
because it was wild.
It was very funny, though.
And I was thinking back about that and like, well, why did this fail? And one of my one of the hypothetical things that I was thinking about was that a problem they had was that it was like simultaneously being designed for 7-year-olds and 47-year-olds. And they're just like completely different things.
Right.
And I think that was a tension in the product that stopped it from ever hitting that escape velocity. One of the things that many articles about this were pointing out was that VR chat was wildly more successful, which is a competing metaversey chat app, wildly more successful than the Horizon Worlds, which had, 100 times, 1,000 times the budget. But VR chat isn't for 7-year-olds. At least that's my take on it. But and they're laying off actually 20% of the overall company. I guess 10% coming.
Well, yeah, that's all of Meta.
Right. And I think that it's about that profitability. So as you mentioned, there haven't been any sort of wild advances in the VR world, while at the same time we are having wild advances in the AI world. And so they have to make a bigger investment in AI and less of an investment in VR for the immediate. And it's plausible that the AI investment could then circle back around, especially when we're talking about all these world models, to eventually bring their vision of the metaverse back to reality. But that focus is definitely shifting at Meta from VR. I mean, it's literally the name of the company, right? Meta. From VR rebranded into AI. What is it? What are they going to change the name of the company to?
AI. I don't. It's a good point. And so
model. How about model?
Model.
I kind of like it.
Well, they can pay us for it. Trademark.
That's Metaverse, Meta, model.
Modelverse.
They're the model company, model.
Mm-hmm.
I bet their stock would jump 10% if they came out and announced that they're renaming the company Model.
I don't think it would, because when's the last time they had a large language model come out?
The market doesn't care about that, Daniel.
It was a while ago, and it wasn't a good one. And there was supposed to be, they announced publicly, we're going to have one by X time. Supposedly it's called Avocado. Supposedly it outperforms Llama 4, the last model that they did that wasn't very good, and is better than, well, some models that their competitors had months to a year plus ago. They are not competitive in this space, and a company can only focus on so many things at once, regardless of how big it is. Maybe they're just finding that lack of focus, or it could be a lack of talent. Other players in the space are throwing insane amounts of money at that top talent. Granted, so is Meta, but I suppose you can only have so many of the top people working at your company. And even then, there's only so much that you can put out at a given time.
Why? So Meta, giant tech company, struggling to create good AI models. Apple, giant tech company, struggling to create good AI models. Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, large tech companies succeeding at creating good AI models. And I mean, but there are also other examples of labs creating good AI models. Why are Apple and Meta struggling so much? Do you have a theory?
Closest comparison that I think is worth making is Facebook/Meta compared to Google. Both are basically in the ads business.
Yes.
Meta, of course, is best known for Facebook, and there are ads on Facebook, and there's lots of monetary value that they derive from people interacting with that, and Instagram and so on. Meanwhile, Google, the web sort of in general, and Google ads and everything that entails. And so if you look at those as kind of similar-ish companies, where do they then differ? Google already had their Google Cloud. They already have, here's a bunch of infrastructure that isn't just running our websites, it's other people sign up and use them. Maybe there's something to that where they had already started to focus as a company on providing shall we say, core services to what they had originally started with. And that's why Google, besides also having very good models, is doing really well with their Gemini class of large language models. Whereas Facebook doesn't have the same class of data available to it, though I'm sure they've tried scraping everything out there. I assume most of the major players have fairly roughly analogous data sets when it comes to let's train a large language model. So something about their secret sauce, or the amount of compute, or the people who are making the versions of these models, or it could be the army of people who are doing the reinforcement loops and looking at, here's two different versions of the same prompt, and I liked this output better. But there is some sort of secret sauce that we don't know about that is making the two different. If you're going to look at those two side by side, and I had to point to something, I'd say it's because Alphabet/Google already had an entire Google Cloud sort of extra space that they were providing this other class of products in.
Yeah. Here's the part that I struggle with, though. So I can follow all of that, but then we have these other competitors like, who's behind Kimi? Is it Moon something?
Moonshot
Kimi.
AI?
That's right. Sorry, I'm bringing up their website. Oh, come on. They don't say the name of the company at Kimi.com. Kimi, Quinn, DeepSeek. I've been running Quinn 3.5 locally, and it's amazing. But
it's a very good model.
These other companies that don't have all those resources that you just point out, well, Google has. That's why they're succeeding and Meta is failing. But they're beating Meta at this game by a long shot. And if I had to just sort of guess, it's because these companies potentially have even less scruples than Meta, and they're just, ripping off the models that are working, and potentially Meta's not. Is that's
certainly part of it. I think that Western, or at the very least, well, let's say Western companies in general are beholden to and adhering to more, if not necessarily all, of the laws when it comes to like copyright infringement and ability to actually use those things and so on. And the presumption is over in China, they say, we're just going to train on all of that anyways.
Have you played with any of these other models at all to any degree?
Yeah, I have, both for work and for play. And it's very easy to say, by default, I'm just going to load up Claude and use the quote unquote best in class, or Gemini or OpenAI or whatever. And we've talked about this a few times on the podcast. I really do think that there is something to the future where everybody can have their own AI that is not being paid by the token or by the subscription. You just have it on your own computer. Nobody can look at what you're typing. It's completely local to you. Actually, private conversations and output. I think there's a tremendous value to that. And there also is value to the ease and commodity of it's just on my phone and I'm already paying the subscription. Might as well use it.
Well, they're much cheaper as well. And so my favorite, when I don't need best in class performance, and I'm looking for a cloud solution, is Kimi 2.5. That model is really, really fast. And that's one of the cool things about it when you're working with it. I mean, it's just instant results back, and they're pretty darn good. So
if you can fit it on your computer, which
no. I run in the cloud. I run that one in the cloud. That's my favorite. If I'm not going Claude Opus or OpenAI 5.4 Pro, it's either the absolute best, or then next I go down to just give it to Kimi 2.5. There's no in between for me, Daniel.
Well, you say just give me that as if it's a lot worse. That model, a open weights model, something you could ostensibly download and run yourself, is not very far behind the best in class currently, and it is above what best in class was less than a year ago.
Yes. Running on my computer, because I've been playing with a lot of these recently, it's Quinn 3.5 if you're looking for that Chat GPT style interface. But that's not the best for coding in my experience. Oh, and by the way, all right, so, and I have a beefy recent MacBook Pro, but the experience of using chat with it is 100% comparable to going to chat.com, chatgpt.com, or Claude.com, Claude.ai. I think both work. You would be hard pressed to immediately notice the difference. And I'm in the quality of the responses and the speed of the responses on a beefy MacBook Pro, but it's really impressive. And then there's something called Quinn 3 Next, which is their coding model. That there's a bigger difference when you're trying to use that with one of these sort of agentic coding harnesses to write code. It works. It's not nearly as good as using the actual Claude models or Anthropic models inside of Claude Code, or the OpenAI models inside of Codex, or even Kimi 2.5 on the cloud. Doesn't compare. Works doesn't compare. But on the chat side, it actually is comparable at this point.
So we talk a lot about coding models because we're programmers by profession, by trade. But for the average person out there, they're not a programmer. Maybe they're using these tools to do some programming, to make little programs and applications to help themselves with their day-to-day work, but the average person doesn't do that much coding. It sounds like you're saying we're already at a point where if you have at least a fairly beefy rig, the average person using a large language model to chat with about stuff in general could probably stop using the cloud providers. Is that more or less where you're at?
No, it's not where I'm at, because I think so the question is all right, if I gave my mom, all right, hey mom, here's $5,000 to buy a computer. Okay, great. She can handle that. She could buy the computer. She can go to apple.com and spend the $5,000. But do I think she could get LM Studio running and then get a chat experience and download the right models and figure out, again, because there's a lot of different versions of every single model, which one should I run and how do I load it and how do I get the chat experience up and how do I manage the sessions?
Barrier to entry.
Yes.
No, I totally understand what you mean. This is barrier to entry. I also, hi mom, I know you listen to this, would probably not feel great about downloading LM Studio, finding the right model, installing it, etc. But if you can, and that barrier to entry will continue to fall, if you can get one of those set up and you do have a reasonably powerful computer today, if everything's set up and you were to say, here is chat.com and Claude.ai and Gemini.google or whatever the like direct link is to Gemini. If you had all of those open and also LM Studio with a Kimi 2.5 or the Qwen 3.5 or any of these other, like, depending on size, best model that you could stuff into your computer today, for the average person doing non-coding work, do you think they'd get about-ish the same sort of responses?
Yes, with one exception. So in general, yes, but if you're using Claude and you're using ChatGPT, a lot of times now they will actually go out and search for things online and bring that information back. And in general, when you're running these models, at least you just downloaded the model, you are just asking questions of the model with the data that it was originally trained on.
You can give them tools, though.
You can, but now we've added another level of complexity, which is not simple, because now you need to manage all the infrastructure. Because when you start sending AI agents out into the world, they get banned left and right.
You need API keys, you need specific integrations. So I completely agree with you there. This year, and I want to go back to and look at our predictions, because I feel like I might have talked about something like this. Year of the agent, etc. What I've noted, and boy, we are not very far into 2026. I just realized, like, okay, a lot has happened in the last few months. In the last few months, I'm going to say like 6 months, large language models have gone from they're really, really good, frankly, year plus at this point. Agents have been a thing for a little while now, but increasing capability in the last like half year. They've gone from this is very good of a thing to just talk to and get responses, it's sort of in a vacuum, to now they're integrated with everything. Hunter, have you used Claude Cowork yet?
I have. Although I haven't found a good use case for it. I've used it just to try it out. And I've also used their computer use, where they just take over your computer, which is sort of like part of, I think,
it's all
part of
very
Cowork.
Researchy and like that. So the point, for those who don't know, Claude Cowork, you can download Claude, the like computer app, onto your computer now, which is very cool. There is a plugin, extra version, whatever, like an extra thing for it called Claude Cowork, where it is specifically set up to be like, I'll look at your Excel files for you. I can completely control your computer. It's more integration. It's in that direction of thing can completely use your computer. And I mention Excel because while I personally don't do a lot of work with like Excel in my day-to-day work, people that I work with, that is their bread and butter. And so something that is on their desktop, it's an app that you can just download and say, hey, here's this file, here's 3 other files over here, connect to my Microsoft OneDrive and grab the meeting notes from yesterday and do this, and it'll just pull all of that information together, synthesize that, and then make edits to those documents for you. What a game changer. And that isn't anywhere near that level of maturity for like the local tooling yet.
True.
Got him.
No. I'm thinking back again where we started here, which is Meta, and they're failing to, I think they're failing. I think that's fine. They're failed on the metaverse, and now they're trying to pivot hard into AI, but they've been failing a lot in the AI and trying to get down to the reason why, because they have these giant coffers. They have all of this money. And so one possibility is that it's their scruples, which historically they've been rather liberal with in what they're willing to do to achieve success. So I'm skeptical of that argument that it's just because they're not willing to train on the same data everyone else is. But I think the other side of it is that the structure of the company, like how you need to have your company structured, how you need to have your company working in this to succeed in this new world, is so radically different, because Meta's been around for a really long time, like 20 some years now, that it's so different that's what they're struggling with, trying to figure out what is the right corporate structure to support it. Now you could point to Google and say, well, yeah, but Google's succeeding, and like they're a really old company, they're older than Meta, and they've figured it out at a giant company. But I wonder if that's part of it too.
Meta has the publicly facing articles right now saying we're doing 20% layoffs and so on. There is a trend that I'm noticing, a through line where a lot of companies are at least hiding behind saying AI is the reason or part of the reason. We're streamlining for AI powered whatever. That's why we're laying a bunch of people off. And you could, and I have indeed said, they're just hiding behind that. This is normal layoffs. People do layoffs all the time. Maybe that is part of it, but I'm actually starting to come around to the thought that programmers aren't what they used to be. Now, again, we've talked about this plenty on this very podcast, where the role of a programmer is changing. It will be radically different still years from now, but if you look at what the barrier to progress was, how do you make new features for your product? You needed an army of programmers and DevOps people and so on and so forth. A ton of people writing out code and wireframing things and hooking stuff up into your front end to affect those changes. And then the product managers and so on can say, I bet this would be a cool thing to do. Let's put it on the backlog. And things went at the pace that these things always go at. But now, from a programming perspective, there is this overhead that the programmers have of, it's not just write the code. The code can be written basically at the speed of thought. Now you have to check it, hopefully carefully. Now you need to integrate it, hopefully more carefully. But even that stuff is more and more automatic. So yes, maybe we are going to lose a bunch of the programmers. And that through line here seems to be that large companies are betting on the fact that you don't need to hire as many programmers. You don't need to worry about them as the barrier to progress. Frankly, the barrier to progress is no longer make the code that makes the button on the website. It's all of the rest of the institutional infrastructure that makes those changes happen. I think software development as a whole, not just programmers, is going to be wildly different in the next few years, because the way companies that make software for a living, so to speak, are currently put together will not exist in the next few years, because there is this barrier to entry, this speed that you can't affect when things are structured the way that they currently are. Burn it all down, and then that's where the grand new future comes from. And I think we're starting to see the first signs of that radical shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I don't think any company has solved this yet. Like, what does the future of software and building software look like? But everyone's trying to figure it out. There was a post I read last week that suggested in the future that there will be effectively two roles. One they called the pirate and one they called the architect. And the idea was that the pirate is just going around and creating new features sort of as fast as possible, identifying needs for the customers, opportunities, and essentially vibe coding. Okay, here's the next product. Here's the next feature, that. Separate from that, you have the architect. Oh, and that person doesn't need to be a senior engineer by any stretch of the imagination. Separate from that, you have the architect, who's the very senior engineer. And what they do is come behind them and basically clean up the slop, but also spend the time that doing the things that architects really like to do, which is thinking about how should this be well constructed? How should the system be scalable? What are the problems that the system is actually having in a production environment? And solving those problems. And the idea that at least they were speculating is that an architect can support multiple pirates. So the pirate's allowed to just ship
multiple pirates.
Yes. Daniel wasn't listening for the last 3 minutes. No, he came back. What in the world are you talking about, Hunter?
Speaking of through lines. Yeah, no, English is a productive language. And so it is very often that a sentence is uttered that's never been uttered before. And that was one of the most not uttered sentences that I think I've heard in a long while.
Yeah, okay.
It just completely sort of flushed the RAM of my brain. I've stopped being self-aware. I'm rebooting right now. Sure, yeah, I agree with whatever the heck that was.
So at Meta, I think, Zuckerberg is more of a pirate than an architect, although he's also a very technical person. But he's definitely taken on more of that sort of pirate thing. And I think they're trying to figure out, how do we operate as pirates? How do we go back to really what was Meta's roots of, move fast and break things? Wasn't that their kind of like
that
founding?
Scrappy startup sort of, yeah. You can't be a scrappy startup when you're gigantic. And
it's really, really hard.
So there's an interesting, I guess you could call it case study in something almost like this happening, but for an entirely different reason. It's Twitter, X, whatever.
Yeah.
Where Elon comes along, buys it. There was a whole story behind, how and why and should he have and should he, blah, blah, blah. He gets it. And then over the course of a fairly short period of time, axes like 80% of the company, a huge percentage of the company. And everyone's laughing online, myself included. The whole thing's going to just implode. It didn't. And so a company can at least continue in some way, shape, or form to exist with way less people. Is that where we're going with AI, where you say Meta, humongous company, ends up being like, I don't know, 100 folks? I do think there literally is too much stuff at a company of that size to be done by a few number of people. Even if the AI agents are incredibly capable, you still do need people to kind of do business, at least until we completely do away with the people involved in that process. And then it is all just AI agents and one person in charge of the whole company. But we clearly haven't seen that yet, even though Mark Zuckerberg himself said, hey, I'm going to make a CEO agent. I'm going to see how much of my own job I could make be done by an AI. Granted, this is very recent, and maybe a year from now, he's going to say, yeah, I did it. This is in charge. I'll collect the paychecks. See you later. That would be a very wild thing to see happen. But we're seeing people use these services and these tools as opposed to be completely obviated by them. Portions of stuff is obviated in that. The company level, that then means people or departments are becoming more obviated. But ultimately, people still run businesses. So
what do you do?
Tear it down too much. What do I do?
You're Zuckerberg. You're Zuckerberg. I gift you Meta, Daniel. Please enjoy your gift. What do you do tomorrow?
Immediately sell it and then yep.
I'm out. Are you still building foundational models? Are you that division? Are you laying that division off, or are you saying no? Please continue building whatever Llama 5 point something.
If I'm Zuckerberg,
yeah,
yes, I think I'd take the rest of the VR portion of the company and just flush it down the toilet immediately and say,
I didn't ask you about the VR. I asked you about foundational models.
Hunter, I said earlier this very podcast,
don't touch my VR, Daniel.
A company can only focus on so many things, no matter how big it is. And so we take all of the VR stuff and say, no, we're not doing that anymore. Yes, we're going to do AI. It's very hot right now. Everyone is saying that we're in a bubble, and it's just.
But are you building foundational models? This is the question I asked, and the question you're not answering.
Right. All of this boils down to is yes, you have to take money and time and people and whatever that's being spent elsewhere and say, now we're also back in the foundational model game, baby, because they use these models so much and everyone's becoming more and more reliant on them that they don't want to spend $1 zillion a month out to Google or to Anthropic or to whoever else. Why not have it in-house on their own hardware? I assume that's the hope and the bet, is that they have their own thing that not only do they release a version of out to everyone else, but also that they can use and have complete control over for their ecosystem and money farm of ads and so on.
Yeah. The rumor is that they're going to just take the Apple approach and just use Gemini. That's the strong rumor until maybe one day they'll replace it with Llama, but that they're just going to go all in on Gemini, same as Apple did.
Well, right. You have to use something in the meantime. And all of the big companies, big and small, it's not just the Metas of the world. It's also your, maybe not quite mom and pop, whatever. Everyone's using AI these days at sort of every organizational size. And yeah, if you're not going to make it yourself, you're going to use somebody else's. If Meta has tried their darndest to make it themselves and are currently failing, in the meantime, they'll use someone else's. If Apple says, we're not going to bother making our own, they will use someone else's. These are important and useful enough tools that people will use them, whether or not they build it themselves. And only so many can build it themselves. There's a huge scale you have to be at before you literally can train your own models.
Mm-hmm. Well, you may have to use someone else's models, but you don't have to listen to someone else's podcast, Daniel.
Ooh, that was good. I like that.
I really struggled on that one.
No, that was really good. See, those models couldn't come up with a really good segue like that.
No, like and subscribe, folks. Like and subscribe. That's where we were. That's where we were going with all of this. You just listened to 40 minutes to get to the conclusion, which was like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
That was simple.
Yeah.
We should have started with that.
Yeah, this podcast could have been like 30 seconds long. Do we really need to talk about Meta for 40 minutes?
We need a large language model to just take all this and then give the one paragraph. As long as you subscribe and like and comment, we'll give you the one paragraph summary of the whole thing. Save you some time.
Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Those are the two biggest players. But you can find us on pretty much any podcasting network. Just search for They Might Be Self-Aware or check out the website at theblur.ai. We will be back very, very, very soon with even more.
They might be self-aware.